The U.S. Senate has approved a bill that would make daylight saving time permanent in the U.S. That could mean Canada may not be far behind. BC has already approved full-time daylight time, but Premier John Horgan has said BC would not do that unless nearby U.S. states did. Meanwhile, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, along with the Premier of Quebec, have said they are receptive to ditching the time change, as Yukon and most of Saskatchewan have done, but have yet to make the move. If the entire United States goes for daylight time, that would be a heavy influence on Canada to do the same. But some experts argue that shift in time could impact Canadians in certain parts of the country in a negative way. Well, joining us now to give us deeper insight into this is Dr. Michael Antle, a psychology professor at the University of Calgary. Sir, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
So take us back to how daylight saving time came to be in the first place, Dr. Antle.
So it was originally proposed, more than 100 years ago now, as a way of saving energy. So by aligning the lights in our buildings with when we were awake, so that we could just use the free energy from the sun. So that was the main reason behind it. But there's also some recreation. So William Willett, the guy who proposed it, was an avid golfer and realized he could get more holes in after work by having the extra hour in the evening.
And how does this small 1 hour shift in time impact our sleep rhythms?
So there's a couple of things there. So we all just experienced in Canada, except for Saskatchewan and Yukon, the spring forward that we did over the weekend. And a lot of people talk about that as we lose an hour of sleep, but it's actually a little bit more insidious than that, because what it is for the next probably about 3 weeks in Canada, we're all going to be waking up about an hour earlier every workday, every school day, relative to what our body clock wants us to do. So the sunrises are getting earlier every day, but it's not going to be until about mid-April that it catches up to where it was. And this is why this one time change actually makes so much of a negative impact for people over just having one bad night's sleep. Usually after you've had a bad night's sleep, you feel better after the following sleep. But with this one, it actually persists for much longer because you're forced to get up before your body is ready.
And does this have any impact on our mental health and overall well-being, doctor?
Well, going to work, driving to work when you're tired and you're stressed can actually have a negative impact. We know that there's going to be higher rates of accidents just from this time change that we just had. But if we were to go to permanent time, people are in the winter, it's going to be even harder for them to get up. You'll probably have more seasonal depressions, the seasonal affective disorder that's more acute here in Canada than in the US, to be creeping in there as well. When you live on the wrong time, when they've done some studies on this, we find higher rates of disease, poor health indexes, and actually higher rates of cancer with people who experience later sunsets because they get less sleep.
That's really interesting, doctor. Now, considering Yukon and most of Saskatchewan have adopted this permanent time, are certain parts of Canada more dependent on daylight saving time than others?
Well, you're going to feel the adverse effects both in the summer and in the winter the further north you go. So the extreme, of course, are populations living up in the Arctic, when in the summer, no matter what the clock is set to, the sun never sets. And in the winter, it never rises above the equator, above the horizon, so you never see that. But it depends on, I guess, how far off the right time you are. So places like Alberta, where I'm located, are actually quite far off of the time we should be following anyways. So we'd find permanent daylight time harder to deal with. People in the maritime provinces and southern Ontario that are further south aren't going to have the extreme changes in day length that people in Edmonton would have. The further north you have, the harder the summers with the really late sunsets, and the harder the winters with the really late sunrises will be for them.
So would a permanent time change for the country overall be better for Canada compared to individual provinces?
From an economics point of view, it would make sense for trying to organize activities that everybody in the country is going to enjoy, like hockey games. I know that's a big challenge, timing the East Coast games versus the West Coast games. So you want to have a national strategy for sure, just to facilitate trade and all the interactions in such a wide country.
All right, doctor, just about a minute left here, but what are your thoughts on this? Would you say a shift to permanent time is a good idea?
Permanent time would be great. We know there is harm that comes from the springing forward. The fall back, we catch a little bit extra sleep, so that helps us. So the time changes aren't good, but you got to pick the right time. And because we're so far north, permanent daylight time would actually be worse than the status quo of springing forward and falling back. Permanent standard time would actually be the best of all for our health and well-being.
All right, Dr. Antle, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
Thank you for having me.